Hello, I'm Jessica, a 30-year-old woman. I want to share a recent experience that helped me through a tough time with my husband and his family. This happened a few months ago, and even though things have calmed down, I'm still working through the emotions. I think talking about it might help me heal. Let's go back 3 years when I made a big decision, marrying my boyfriend Tyler. We met through friends and had 3 great years together before getting married. Tyler was fun, caring, and loving. He came from a wealthy family and had a good job, so he often bought me gifts and showed me affection. We both loved to travel, which made our bond stronger. As we got more serious, my friends were happy for us and praised Tyler. Tyler was very generous, sometimes too much. For example, he bought me a new laptop when I graduated college. I felt uneasy about not being able to spend as much as he did. I'd say, "Tyler, I'm just a college student. I can't match your spending. Let's try to split other costs at least." But Tyler would insist on treating me, saying his friends did the same for their partners. Over time, I got used to it but still tried to contribute as much as I could. After I got a good job, we started sharing expenses more equally and even talked about moving in together. One day, Tyler suggested, "You can move in with me. I inherited my house from my grandpa, so no worries about rent, but we should split other expenses to keep things fair." Even though I was unsure, he reassured me, and we began living together. We agreed to share the financial responsibilities fairly given our different incomes, and everything was going well until I met Tyler's family. They lived far away, and since Tyler was busy with work, I had to host his parents and sister alone. Tyler warned me they could be judgmental but didn't go into details. He suggested I ignore any hurtful comments. I tried to stay positive, but my optimism faded when they arrived. Instead of a warm welcome, Tyler's parents and sister seemed annoyed. This set a tense atmosphere. During our conversations, it was clear they didn't like me. "So you're the woman Tyler has been seeing," Tyler's mother, Martha, said disapprovingly. "I didn't expect to find you in this house. Do you even pay rent?" "No, Martha, I don't pay rent," I explained. Tyler said the house is paid for, but we split all other bills evenly. I hoped this would clear things up, but Martha dismissed it. "Just because the house is paid for doesn't mean you can mooch off him. This is his house, not yours. Remember that for the rest of your life." The conversation got more uncomfortable, especially with Tyler's sister, Teresa, who glared at me more than she talked. When I asked about her life, she mentioned being married to a wealthy billionaire and brushed me off. During their visit, Tyler didn't support me and seemed to side with his family. Gabrielle and Martha kept criticizing me, making the visit hard. They disapproved of my spending on makeup and skincare, saying it was wrong since they thought I didn't contribute enough financially. Tyler's comments didn't help. He'd say things like, "Jessica was a struggling student when we first met," implying I depended on him a lot, which wasn't entirely true. He'd mention how he paid for everything early on because my job didn't cover my taste for luxury. I was shocked and reminded him we now split our bills equally. I explained that I had always lived simply, both before and during our relationship. Any luxury items I had were gifts from Tyler, which I often told him not to buy because they were too extravagant. Tyler justified his spending by saying his social status required him to give fancy gifts, showing that his generosity was more about impressing his friends than caring for me. After his family left, I confronted Tyler about how they treated me. Unfortunately, he brushed it off. "Don't take it to heart, Jessica. They meant well. You're overreacting," he said, dismissing my concerns. Despite my doubts, Tyler proposed 5 months later, and I happily accepted. We planned an engagement party and split the costs. I was running a small side business that Tyler knew about but never asked much about. For me, it was more of a fulfilling hobby than a big money maker. When it was time to organize our engagement party, I decided to treat myself a bit, and Tyler supported the idea. We shared the expenses, and I even covered plane tickets for my extended family. However, during the party, the criticisms resurfaced. "You shouldn't have spent so much on this party, Jessica," Martha said. "You're draining Tyler's account before you're even married. At this rate, you'll end up with a backyard wedding. I thought you were financially irresponsible, but it's worse than I thought." I stood my ground, saying the party was extravagant, but we both agreed to it. I paid my share, and it was actually Tyler's idea to include everyone. He insisted and didn't mind the expense. But the criticism continued. Martha accused me of manipulating Tyler into spending too much. Teresa chimed in, saying I should have been more considerate. Frustrated, I excused myself and went to the lawn to find some peace. There, I overheard Teresa and her husband Justin laughing at me. It felt like my engagement party was falling apart, and Tyler seemed unaware of his family's harsh judgments. Most of his extended family thought I was jobless and dependent on Tyler. My mom, noticing my distress, approached me and suggested I reconsider the engagement due to the ongoing mean comments from Tyler's family. After the party, I confronted Tyler about the situation. He brushed it off as a joke and expressed his love, saying financial matters didn't concern him. I told him I wanted to contribute more, especially towards rent, but he dismissed the idea. As we planned the wedding, the stress increased. Tyler's parents continued to criticize me, accusing me of bankrupting their son. Their constant scrutiny made the engagement period very challenging. I made it clear that everyone, including my mom, was helping with the wedding expenses. However, Martha accused me of taking advantage of Tyler and trying to deplete his bank account, branding me a gold digger. I tried to reassure Gabriel, saying, "Gabriel, I'm not asking for any financial help. We can finance the wedding ourselves." But despite my explanations, Teresa criticized the cost of my dress and makeup on the wedding day, even though my mother covered those expenses. The wedding ceremony went smoothly, but at the reception, Martha and Gabriel continued to criticize my spending habits, accusing me of financially exploiting Tyler. Despite their harsh words, I stayed silent to avoid ruining our special day. A few months later, Tyler got a significant promotion at work and wanted to celebrate with a grand family dinner. I was excited for him and decided to cover all the expenses myself. "Tyler, I want this dinner to be extraordinary. I'm so proud of you and want to celebrate your success," I told him. Tyler appreciated my gesture, and I told him my business was doing well. I had a stable income from my job and recently accessed a trust fund from my paternal grandfather. I planned the event meticulously to make it perfect. However, when his family arrived, they were unhappy with the arrangements. Despite positive feedback from other guests, his family seemed to disapprove of the celebration's lavishness. During the speeches, Martha stood up and, with her voice carrying across the room, began criticizing. "I want to thank everyone for coming to celebrate my son. He's hardworking and generous, and he really deserves this promotion. Unfortunately, he made a poor choice in his partner. It's sad that he ended up with someone who acts like a gold digger. I wish he had seen her true nature earlier. Then he wouldn't have to work so hard to support her expensive lifestyle." Martha continued, her voice full of regret. "It's clear to everyone here that his wife has been very extravagant. From the engagement party to tonight's dinner, she has almost drained his accounts." Feeling hurt, I took a deep breath and tried to stay calm. Martha added, "Thank goodness we had Jessica sign a prenuptial agreement before the wedding. At least some of his assets are protected." She seemed relieved, saying it was good her son married someone who could at least look like a trophy wife. Tyler agreed with his mother. "I can't even afford to spend money on myself anymore. There's nothing left," he said. He called marrying me a mistake and compared me unfavorably to others. Shocked and frustrated, I finally spoke up. "Do you really think I'm a gold digger?" Tyler's response was cutting. "Your lifestyle is quite damaging to my bank account." Determined to clear things up, I said, "Since you all think I'm a gold digger, let me show you my bank balance." I revealed my financial independence to everyone present. The room fell silent in disbelief. Martha accused, "Did you steal my son's money?" Tyler added suspiciously, "She must have taken it from you." Frustrated but calm, I replied, "I don't need to steal money from your son. This is all from my efforts. I recently accessed a trust fund from my grandfather. I plan to use it to buy a bigger house for us, but now that seems unlikely." Despite my explanation, Tyler suggested we could still buy the house. "It'll be a wonderful gift," he said, but I was firm. "This is not happening. Your family has insulted me for too long, and you've never stood up for me. Instead, you've let them spread lies about me." Tyler tried to downplay the situation, saying I was overreacting. But I stood my ground. "No, I am not overreacting. Everyone here knows what your family has been calling me. They were here when you allowed them to insult me during our engagement party." Finally, I reached my breaking point. I couldn't tolerate the disrespect anymore. "I want a divorce," I said sternly. Tyler tried to plead with me, but my mom intervened. "You never defended my daughter. It's time she ends this toxic relationship, she declared. We left the party, leaving behind a crowd of shocked guests. I was resolute in my decision to leave Tyler and move on. My mom's support was unwavering as we exited, marking the end of a painful chapter in my life. After the confrontation, I went to our home, gathered my belongings, and stayed with my mom for solace. The next day, I contacted my cousin, who was a lawyer, to start the divorce process. With the prenuptial agreement in place, it was straightforward, so I didn't have to share my assets with Tyler. The situation escalated when Tyler and his family came to my mom's house, demanding to talk. My mom stood firm and told them to leave. Tyler kept trying to contact me, alternating between apologies and threats. I saved all the messages, ready to file a restraining order if needed. My mom's unwavering support gave me strength. Tyler even tried to confront me at work, but security escorted him out. I decided to leave my job, as my growing business meant I no longer needed it. I resigned that day, ready to move forward. A week later, I served Tyler the divorce papers at his workplace. He went to my old office only to find out I had resigned. My former colleague said he kept sending flowers and gifts to my mom's house, which we returned. The harassment made me consider relocating. With my mom's encouragement, I found a new house in the next state, a sanctuary away from my ex. As I awaited the finalization of the divorce, the judge ensured it was smooth thanks to the prenuptial agreement. During the 5 months of our separation, I focused on healing and preparing for a new chapter in my life. I settled into my new home and changed my number to avoid Tyler's messages. I heard Tyler's life was falling apart. He blamed his parents for our breakup and faced setbacks at work. His colleagues distanced themselves, and his seniors were unhappy with the negative publicity. His parents spread infidelity rumors, but they didn't gain traction. In contrast, my life began to flourish. I focused on my business and enjoyed my newfound freedom. I started dating again, cautiously, but remained hopeful about finding someone who truly valued me. Though Tyler caused me pain, overcoming the challenges made me stronger. I looked forward to a brighter future, confident in my resilience and aware of what I wanted in relationships and life. The email notification pinged on my laptop at 2:47 a.m. Another urgent request from a client in Hong Kong who needed their fabric samples expedited. I rubbed my burning eyes and reached for my 4th cup of coffee of the night, the bitter taste mixing with the exhaustion that had become my constant companion. Through the office window, I could see the empty parking lot bathed in orange streetlight. Even the janitor had gone home hours ago. But here I was, Alexandra Novak, 25 years old with a master's degree in international business, pulling another all-nighter at my family's textile import company while my younger brother Dylan was probably passed out in some Miami nightclub, his $150,000 CEO salary funding another weekend of luxury I could only dream of. The irony burned worse than the coffee. While I managed every aspect of operations, from supplier negotiations in 3 different languages to crisis management at 3 a.m., Dylan's most challenging decision was choosing which restaurant to take clients to for his business lunches that lasted until 5 p.m. My phone buzzed with a text from him. "Bro, just closed the Peterson deal. Drinks are on me." Below was a selfie of him grinning with a martini, surrounded by laughing executives at what looked like a 5-star rooftop bar. I wanted to throw my phone across the room. The Peterson deal that I had researched, priced, and negotiated for 3 months. The same deal where I've flown to Chicago twice on my own dime because travel expenses need to be approved by the CEO, and Dylan was too busy with his girlfriend's art gallery opening to sign off on company funds. But according to my parents, Dmitry and Elena Novak, this was just how family businesses work. Dylan had the natural leadership qualities and business instincts that made him perfect for the CEO role, while I was better suited for supporting the vision, code for doing all the actual work while he took all the credit. "It's your duty as the eldest daughter," Mom would say whenever I dared to question the arrangement. "Family comes before personal ambition. Your grandfather built this business from nothing so that his children and grandchildren could prosper together." Prosper together. The phrase made me sick. Dylan was certainly prospering. BMW in the garage, penthouse apartment downtown, vacation photos from Santorini and Aspen cluttering his Instagram. Meanwhile, I was surviving on ramen noodles and splitting rent on a studio apartment with a roommate because 70 hours a week of unpaid labor doesn't exactly build a savings account. The breaking point had been building for months, but it crystallized that Tuesday morning when I overheard Dylan on a conference call with our accountant. "Yeah, just keep paying my salary as usual," he laughed, "and make sure to categorize those Miami trip expenses as business development. Alexandra handles all the operational stuff anyway, so I need to focus on networking and deals." The accountant's voice crackled through the speakerphone. "And what about Alexandra's compensation? I don't see any payroll entries for her." "Oh, she doesn't need a salary, she's family. Plus she's learning so much about the business. That's worth more than money, right?" They both chuckled like it was the funniest joke they'd ever heard. I stood frozen in the hallway, a stack of shipping manifests clutched in my trembling hands. 3 years. 3 years of sacrificing my career, my social life, my financial future, while my little brother treated our family's legacy like his personal piggy bank. That afternoon, I did something I should have done months earlier. I called a labor attorney. Jennifer Walsh's office was in a sleek downtown building, all glass and steel that screamed competence and success. She listened to my story without interruption, taking notes on a yellow legal pad while I laid out 3 years of documentation I'd been unconsciously collecting. "The good news is you have excellent records," she said, reviewing printouts of emails, work schedules, and financial documents. "Bank records showing the business's profitability, evidence of your contributions, clear documentation of the disparity in treatment. This is actually a stronger case than most family business disputes I see." "But they're going to claim I'm just a volunteer helping out family," I said. "That's what they always say when I bring up payment." Jennifer smiled grimly. "Family businesses aren't exempt from labor laws. If you're performing regular work that directly benefits a for-profit enterprise, you're entitled to compensation regardless of your relationship to the owners. The Department of Labor takes these cases very seriously, especially when there's clear gender discrimination involved." Gender discrimination. The words hung in the air like a bell that couldn't be unrung. "Your brother gets paid $150,000 for part-time work while you work full-time for nothing," Jennifer continued. "That's textbook discriminatory practice. The fact that he's male and younger makes it even more obvious." She referred me to Sandra Martinez at the Department of Labor's Wage and Hour Division. "File a complaint first," Jennifer advised. "Let the DOL investigate and document everything officially. If they find violations, which they will, you'll have a much stronger position for any follow-up action." The complaint form was surprisingly simple. Basic information about the business, my role, hours worked, and compensation received. 0. But Sandra wanted documentation, and after 3 years of basically running the company, I had plenty. Email threads showing me handling everything from customer service to supplier crisis, work schedules proving my 70-hour weeks, financial records I had access to as the person who basically managed the books, meeting minutes where my contributions were discussed but never compensated. The most damning evidence was a board meeting recording from 6 months earlier, where Dad had explicitly told the other investors that my unpaid work was saving the company at least $200,000 annually in management salaries. While Sandra conducted her investigation, the atmosphere at home became increasingly toxic. I'd started setting boundaries, leaving at 8 p.m. instead of midnight, refusing to answer emails on Sundays. Push back on Dallin's assumption that I'd drop everything for his latest crisis. "You're not being a team player," Dad lectured during one particularly heated family dinner. "This business only works when everyone contributes equally." "I am contributing equally," I shot back. "More than equally. The difference is Dylan gets paid for his contributions. Dylan has different responsibilities. He's building relationships, securing deals. With research and groundwork that I provide. Dylan couldn't find Hong Kong on a map before I started preparing his client briefs." Mom jumped in with her usual guilt tactics. "Family loyalty used to mean something. Your grandmother worked alongside your grandfather for 40 years and never asked for a penny. Grandmother also bought half the business when grandfather died. What exactly am I going to inherit here?" The question clearly caught them off guard. In all their lectures about family obligation and shared sacrifice, they'd never actually discussed what my equity stake would be, probably because they'd never intended for me to have one. Dylan, meanwhile, seemed genuinely confused by my growing resistance to his demands. He'd burst into my office with some new project or crisis, expecting me to drop everything and solve it immediately. "Why are you being so difficult lately?" he asked after I told him I couldn't stay late to fix a shipping issue he created by giving a client the wrong delivery date. "I'm not being difficult, I'm being professional. If you need someone to work overtime, you need to plan ahead and compensate them appropriately. Come on, Alex. We're family. Since when do you care about clocking hours?" "Since I realized I've been working full-time for 3 years without a single paycheck while you've collected over $400,000 in salary." He actually looked shocked, like the math had never occurred to him. The investigation moved faster than I expected. Sandra was thorough and professional, interviewing employees, reviewing financial records, and documenting every aspect of the business operations. Her preliminary findings were devastating for my parents. "Clear violations of the Fair Labor Standards Act," she explained during our phone call. "Based on your documented hours and responsibilities, they owe you at least $95,000 in back wages at minimum wage rates. But given your education and actual job functions, fair market compensation would be significantly higher." More interesting was what she discovered about the corporate structure. "Your parents listed you as a 10% shareholder when they incorporated, but there's no record of you ever receiving distributions. Either you're not actually a shareholder, which makes the filing fraudulent, or you are a shareholder and you're owed 3 years of profit distributions." The numbers were staggering. My share of company profits over 3 years should have been around $150,000. Combined with unpaid wages, the total approached $250,000. "What happens now?" I asked. "We can pursue wage violations through our standard process, or if you want to address the shareholder issues, we can refer this to other agencies for a broader investigation." I thought about Dylan's vacation photos, his casual assumption that I'd always be there to clean up his messes, my parents' lectures about family loyalty while they systematically exploited me. "Let's pursue everything," I said. The decision to quit wasn't dramatic, just a quiet recognition that I'd reached my limit. I spent a weekend writing my resignation letter and preparing transition documents for every project I managed. Despite everything, I didn't want to sabotage the business Dad had built from nothing. Monday morning, I walked into our weekly management meeting. Dad, Mom, Dylan, and me crammed into the conference room that still smelled like Dylan's breakfast sandwich. I slid copies of my resignation letter across the table. "Effective Friday, I'll be transitioning out of my role here," I announced. The silence was deafening. Dad's face cycled through several colors. Mom's eyes immediately filled with tears. Dylan just stared at the paper like it was written in hieroglyphs. "This is ridiculous," Dad finally exploded. "You can't just quit. This is a family business. You have obligations. I've been fulfilling those obligations for 3 years without compensation. I've decided to accept a position elsewhere." This was optimistic. I had some promising interviews lined up, but nothing concrete yet. Still, my Northwestern MBA and 3 years of operational experience were apparently more valuable on the open market than in my own family. "Sweetheart," Mom pleaded, "we can discuss compensation. We never wanted you to feel undervalued." Why was this discussion necessary when Dylan started working here? The question hung in the air like smoke. Dylan shifted uncomfortably, probably realizing for the first time how the whole arrangement looked to an outsider. "Dylan is the CEO," Dad said weakly. "He has different responsibilities." "Yes, but I've been doing the work of a COO and CFO for 3 years. What's the market rate for those roles?" They couldn't answer because they'd never bothered to research it. In their minds, my labor was free because I was family. "Who's going to handle all your projects?" Dylan asked, panic creeping into his voice. "That's detailed in my transition documents. You'll need to hire at least 2 people to cover my responsibilities. I recommend starting the search immediately." What followed was hours of alternating bargaining and guilt trips, offers of profit sharing that should have been implemented years ago, promises of official titles that felt insulting in their lateness, reminders of family loyalty that ignored the fundamental inequality of the situation. I listened politely and declined everything. Not to be vindictive, but because I'd lost faith that they'd ever treat me as an equal rather than free labor with a genetic obligation to sacrifice. My last week was surreal. Word spread quickly among employees that I was leaving, and their reactions were both heartwarming and validating. These people had watched me work myself into the ground. They knew who really kept things running. Miss Alex, our shipping manager Carlos said, "I don't know how this place gonna survive without you. You're the only one who understands how everything connects." He wasn't wrong. I built most of our systems from scratch, cultivated relationships with every key supplier, and developed the institutional knowledge that made daily operations possible. Friday afternoon, I cleaned out my desk and returned my access cards. Dad hadn't spoken to me all week. Mom alternated between weepy guilt trips and angry lectures about family betrayal. Dylan cornered me in the parking lot as I loaded boxes into my car. "Alex, this is insane. We're family. We work things out." "Family doesn't exploit family, Dylan. Nobody exploited you. You were getting incredible experience learning the business. You were getting experience too. The difference is you were also getting paid $150,000 a year for it." He had no response to that. The immediate aftermath was almost comical. My phone started ringing at 6 a.m. Monday morning, then every 20 minutes until noon. Panicked voices asking where files were located, how to handle various crises when I was coming back. I didn't answer any of them. The texts were more entertaining. Dylan begging me to just consult remotely until we figure this out. Mom sending guilt-laden essays about family obligations. Dad's single message: "This is selfish and immature." By Wednesday, Mom showed up at my apartment with tears and homemade baklava. "The whole business is falling apart," she sobbed. "Your father had to cancel the Morrison contract meeting because nobody knows how to prepare the presentation. Dylan can't access the supplier database. The warehouse is backed up because no one understands the shipping protocols you created." "Sounds like a management problem," I said gently. "They'll need to hire qualified people." "We can't afford to hire people right now." This was laughable. I'd seen the books. The business was profitable enough to pay Dylan 6 figures while maintaining substantial cash reserves. "Mom, I love you, but I'm not coming back." This situation was never sustainable. She left with her baklava untouched, muttering about ungrateful children. The Department of Labor case moved forward steadily. My parents hired an employment attorney who tried to argue that I was a volunteer motivated by family affection. The argument crumbled when Sandra presented evidence of my regular responsibilities, the business's dependence on my work, and the profit distributions that had mysteriously bypassed me. The case ultimately settled. The final number was $240,000. Less than my full calculation, but enough to make a statement. More importantly, the settlement required changes going forward. Any family members working for the business had to receive fair market compensation. Dylan's salary was restructured to reflect his actual contributions. New policies ensured proper shareholder distributions. I used part of the settlement to relocate to Seattle and accept a position with a tech company that had been courting me. The work was challenging but fairly compensated, and my experience managing operations for a family business turned out to be incredibly valuable. The family relationships were harder to repair. Dad never quite forgave me for airing private matters publicly. Mom gradually came around, especially after seeing how much happier I was. Dylan and I actually developed a better relationship once we weren't trapped in a toxic workplace dynamic. Ironically, the business improved once they were forced to operate professionally. With proper staffing and systems, they expanded into new markets and increased profitability. Dad grudgingly admitted that maybe it worked out, though he still insisted my methods were unnecessarily dramatic. 2 years later, Sandra called to ask if I'd speak to a Department of Labor training session about family business exploitation cases. Standing in front of a room full of investigators, I shared what I've learned. Document everything, not just for legal purposes, but for your own sanity. When people who claim to love you systematically devalue your contributions, it's easy to internalize their narrative. One investigator asked how I'd found the courage to pursue the case despite family pressure. I realized that real love doesn't require some family members to sacrifice everything so others can prosper, I said. If demanding fair treatment damages the relationship was already broken. The settlement money was nice, but the real victory was breaking a cycle that could have continued indefinitely. I'd shown my family, and myself, that love and loyalty don't require accepting exploitation. Sometimes the person who will do your job after you quit isn't another family member willing to work for free. Sometimes it's a Department of Labor investigator with a calculator and a very different perspective on fair compensation. The business still operates today, more professionally managed and properly staffed. Dad still tells people I helped out for a while before pursuing other opportunities. I don't correct him anymore. The truth is in my career, my bank account, and the precedent set for future family members. Justice doesn't always look like revenge. Sometimes it looks like a government investigator asking simple questions like, why is one child paid while the other works for free? Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to accept because we're family as an excuse for exploitation. That investigator, as it turned out, was worth every penny they didn't pay me. The champagne flute trembled in my hand as I stood before 200 guests at the Riverside Country Club. My brother Adrian sat at the head table, his arm draped possessively around his fiancée Victoria, that same self-satisfied smirk playing on his lips that I'd seen too many times before. Before we toast the happy couple, I said, pulling out my phone, I thought we should all hear something special, a recording from 2 years ago that perfectly captures the bond between siblings. Adrian's smile faltered. Just slightly. Just enough. I pressed play. His voice filled the ballroom, crystal clear despite the background noise of the hotel bar where I'd secretly recorded him. Tomorrow's the big day, boys. My precious little sister finally gets her fairy tale wedding. Laughter from his friends. Too bad about the food poisoning that's about to hit the catering staff. Amazing what a few $100 and some ipecac can accomplish. Gasps rippled through the room. Victoria's hand flew to her mouth. The recording continued. Your big day is ruined, just like you deserve. Little Miss Perfect finally gets to see what disappointment feels like. I clicked stop. The silence was absolute. Cheers to karma, I said, raising my glass to Adrian's ashen face. And to Victoria. You deserve to know exactly who you're marrying. Victoria stood slowly, her engagement ring catching the light as she pulled it off. She didn't throw it. Didn't make a scene, just set it carefully on the table and walked out, her heels clicking against the marble floor in the silence. The room erupted. But to understand how we got here, to this moment of perfect, devastating justice, you need to know about my wedding day. And about the 30 years of cruelty that led to it. Adrian was the golden child from birth. 3 years older, blessed with my father's height and my mother's charm, he could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. I was the afterthought, quiet, bookish, perpetually in his shadow. He weaponized that shadow early. When I was 6 and lost my first tooth, Adrian convinced me the tooth fairy was actually a tooth witch who would curse me if I didn't give her all my Halloween candy. When I was 10 and won the school spelling bee, he accidentally spilled grape juice on my certificate. When I was 16 and had my first boyfriend, Adrian told him I had a contagious skin condition. Just joking around, he'd say when caught. Siblings tease each other. Don't be so sensitive, Rosie. My parents always bought it. Boys will be boys. He's just being protective. You need to develop thicker skin. So I did. I developed skin so thick that I stopped telling my family about my achievements, my relationships, my dreams. I went to college across the country, built a career in biomedical engineering, found love with James, all without sharing more than the bare minimum with my family. Which is why Adrian was shocked when I announced my engagement. Little Rosie's getting married. He'd laughed at the family dinner where I'd shared the news. To an actual human man, not one of those lab experiments you're always fiddling with. His name is James, I said calmly. He's a pediatric surgeon. We've been together for 3 years. Adrian's eyes had narrowed. In our family's mythology, he was supposed to be the successful one. The one who hit milestones first. The one whose life everyone celebrated. 3 years, and this is the first we're hearing about it. My mother clutched her pearls. Rosalind, how could you keep this from us? I wanted to be sure, I said, though the real answer was, I wanted to keep something Adrian couldn't ruin. But I'd underestimated him. The wedding planning started smoothly. James and I wanted something simple minus 150 guests, garden ceremony, reception at the Fairmont Hotel. My parents insisted on contributing, thrilled to finally be part of my life again. Adrian appointed himself unofficial wedding coordinator. You need help, he announced. You've always been scattered, Rosie. Details aren't your strong suit. I design medical devices for a living. I reminded him, I think I can handle a wedding. But he wore me down with family pressure. My mother let him help, sweetheart. He planned that beautiful fundraiser for his company. My father, Adrian, has connections. He can get you discounts. So I let him in. Just a little. Just enough. The sabotage started small. Vendors would call to confirm changes I hadn't made. The florist nearly ordered lilies, which I'm deathly allergic to, because Adrian had updated my preferences. The band almost learned a playlist full of songs from my awkward teenage years. Each time, Adrian played innocent. Miscommunication. Trying to help. You said you wanted lilies, didn't you? I started documenting everything, keeping vendors on a separate email chain he didn't know about. I thought I was protecting myself. I wasn't protecting myself enough. 3 days before the wedding, I was at my bachelorette party, a quiet wine tasting with my closest friends, when my phone exploded with texts. The catering manager, half my staff just called in sick. Food poisoning outbreak. We might have to cancel. The florist, your brother just called to cancel the entire order. Please confirm. The venue coordinator, Mr. Morrison says you're postponing. I need to hear from you directly. I excused myself and called Adrian. He answered on the first ring, bar noise loud in the background. Rosie, how's the party? Not too wild, I hope. Wouldn't want you hungover for the big day. Adrian, what did you do? What? I can't hear you. I'm out with the guys celebrating my baby sister's last days of freedom. I hung up and called James. We have a problem. We spent the next 48 hours in damage control mode. James's sister knew a backup catering company. My maid of honor had a cousin in floral wholesale. We confirmed and reconfirmed every detail, password protected every vendor account. But Adrian had one more card to play. The morning of my wedding, I woke up to sunlight streaming through the hotel windows and my phone buzzing with a text from an unknown number. It was a photo of Adrian at a bar, surrounded by his friends, all raising shots. The timestamp was 2:47 a.m. The caption, to ruining perfect little Rosie's perfect little wedding. My hands shook as I scrolled to the next message. Another photo. Adrian handing cash to someone in catering whites. Then another, him on the phone grinning. The final message was a voice recording. I played it with my heart in my throat. Your big date is ruined, just like you deserve, Adrian's drunken voice slurred. Finally get to see Princess Rosalind realize she's not better than the rest of us. Not smarter. Not special. Just lucky, and luck runs out. The messages ended with, thought you should know what your brother really thinks. He's been bragging all night. I'm nobody, just couldn't stand listening anymore. Good luck today. I sat on the bed, staring at my wedding dress, as rage crystallized into something colder. Clearer. I forwarded everything to my email, then called my tech-savvy cousin Mark. I need you to help me save some audio files. Multiple backups. Cloud storage. Everything. Rosie, you okay? I will be, I said. After today, I will be. The wedding itself was beautiful. The backup caterers were actually better than the original. The wholesale flowers looked stunning. Adrian showed up late, clearly hungover, wearing sunglasses inside the church. Rough night? I asked as he took his place as groomsman. You know me, he said with that familiar smirk. Always celebrating my little sister's achievements. Yes, I said. I do know you. During the reception, he gave a toast. Called me his baby sister who always tried so hard. Joked about how some of us are born graceful and some of us have to work for everything. The crowd laughed politely, uncomfortably. James squeezed my hand under the table. We could play it now, he whispered. No, I murmured back. Today is our day. He doesn't get to be the center of attention. So I smiled. Danced. Cut the cake. Threw the bouquet. Let Adrian believe he'd won whatever sick game he'd been playing our whole lives. But I kept the recording. Saved and backed up and waiting. Because I knew Adrian. Knew his patterns. Knew that someone who needed to sabotage his sister's wedding would eventually have a big day of his own. I just had to wait. 2 years passed. I focused on my marriage, my career, my life. Adrian and I barely spoke beyond mandatory family gatherings, where I was politely distant and he was smugly superior. Then came the announcement. Adrian was engaged to Victoria Ashworth, heiress to a hotel fortune, and the exact type of woman he'd always dreamed of landing. beautiful, connected, and wealthy enough to make him feel like he finally won. The engagement party invitation arrived on expensive cardstock, black tie, Riverside Country Club, a who's who of society guests. "We don't have to go," James said. "Oh, we're going," I replied, fingering the flash drive where I'd saved the recording. "We're definitely going." I bought a new dress, had my hair professionally done, wore the diamond earrings James had given me for our anniversary. The ones Adrian had joked were probably fake because biomedical engineers don't make real money. We arrived precisely on time, not early enough to seem eager, not late enough to make an entrance, just present, part of the crowd, until the moment was right. Victoria found me at the bar. "Rosalind, I'm so glad you could make it. Adrian talks about you all the time." "I'm sure he does," I said, genuinely liking her. She seemed smart, accomplished, unaware of what she was signing up for. "How did you two meet?" "Charity fundraiser. He outbid everyone for a dinner with me," she laughed. "Spent $20,000 just to take me out. Said he knew I was the one the moment he saw me." "More like he knew your net worth the moment he Googled you," I thought but didn't say. "He's lucky to have you," I said instead, and meant it. She was lucky too. Lucky I was about to save her from a lifetime with someone who viewed relationships as competitions and love as a weapon. The moment came during toasts. Adrian's best man had just finished a rambling story about their college days when the microphone was passed around for family. I stood. I'd like to say something. Adrian's eyes narrowed slightly, but he gestured magnanimously. "Of course. Everyone, my sister Rosalind. We were just talking about how she couldn't make it to the engagement dinner last month. Work obligations, you know." There had been no engagement dinner, no invitation. Another little dig, making me look like the absent, uncaring sister. I smiled and took the microphone. "Family is so important," I began. "It shapes who we are, who we become. Adrian certainly shaped me. Taught me to be strong, to document everything, to always have backup plans." Nervous laughter from the crowd. Adrian's smile tightened. "Before we toast the happy couple, I thought we should all hear something special. A recording from 2 years ago that perfectly captures the bond between siblings." I pulled out my phone, connected it to the sound system with a cable I tested earlier. Adrian started to stand, but Victoria put her hand on his arm. Then his voice filled the room. Clear, undeniable. Damning. I let it play all the way through, the planning, the bragging, the cruelty, the cash exchanging hands, every horrible word. When it finished, I looked directly at Victoria. "You deserve to know exactly who you're marrying. Someone who would sabotage his sister's wedding for the crime of being happy. Someone who takes pleasure in others' pain. Someone who sees love as a competition and family as obstacles to overcome." Victoria's face had gone pale, then red, then pale again. She looked at Adrian, waiting for a denial, an explanation, anything. That's out of context," he stammered. "I was drunk, joking around." "Rosie, how could you?" "Cheers to karma," I said, raising my glass. Victoria stood slowly with a dignity I admired. She removed her ring, a massive diamond that probably cost more than my wedding, and set it on the table. "I need some air," she said quietly, then louder, to the room. "The party's over." She walked out, head high, leaving Adrian gaping at the head table. The silence stretched until someone, I think it was my cousin Mark, started a slow clap. Others joined in. Not everyone, but enough. I handed the microphone back to the stunned DJ and returned to my seat. "Ready to go?" James asked, pride shining in his eyes. "Almost," I said. Adrian had stumbled over to our table, his face contorted with rage. "You vindictive." "Careful," I said calmly. "Everyone's recording on their phones now. Do you really want another video going viral?" He looked around, saw the raised phones, the watching eyes. "Why?" he asked, and for the first time in our lives, he sounded genuinely bewildered. "I'm your brother." "No," I said. "You're someone who happened to be born into my family. Brothers protect each other, support each other. They don't spend 30 years trying to diminish their siblings' light because they're afraid it makes their own look dimmer. I made you stronger. Abuse doesn't make people stronger, Adrian. Surviving it does. And I survived you." I stood taking James's hand. "Good luck with the fallout." "Oh, in the hotel?" They charge a 50% cancellation fee for parties over 100 people. Victoria's father owns the venue, so I doubt you'll get a family discount. We left him standing there, surrounded by the wreckage of his own making. The aftermath was swift and brutal. The video, because of course someone recorded it, went viral in our social circles. #WeddingSaboteur trended locally for a day. Victoria gave an interview to a society blogger about dodging a bullet and the importance of knowing someone's character before committing. Adrian lost more than a fiancé. He lost his reputation, his social standing, the carefully constructed image of the charming, successful older brother. Our parents, forced to confront evidence they couldn't dismiss as sibling teasing, finally saw him clearly. How could you? My mother asked me at a family dinner a month later, just the three of us, Adrian notably absent. Your own brother? How could he? I countered. My wedding day, Mom. He tried to ruin my wedding day because he couldn't stand to see me happy. She had no answer for that. Adrian moved to Seattle. Started over with a new job, new circles, new people who didn't know the story. He sent me an email 6 months after the party. I hope you're happy. You destroyed my life. I responded. I didn't destroy anything. I just showed everyone who you really are. The destruction was all your own. He didn't write back. 5 years later, I still have the recording. Not out of spite, but as a reminder. A reminder that staying silent in the face of cruelty isn't strength. It's complicity in your own diminishment. That family isn't an excuse for abuse. That sometimes the best gift you can give someone is the truth about the person they're about to marry. Victoria sends a Christmas card every year. She married a cardiac surgeon who, by all accounts, adores her. Her notes always end the same way. Thank you for the best wedding gift I never knew I needed. James and I have 2 daughters now. Sometimes I watch them play, the older one naturally taking charge, and I intervene when teasing crosses into cruelty, when just joking becomes just mean, when sibling rivalry threatens to become something darker. Because patterns repeat unless someone breaks them, and sometimes breaking them requires playing a recording at an engagement party while 200 people watch a bully finally face consequences. Adrian thought he'd ruined my wedding. Instead, he gave me the evidence I needed to save Victoria from a lifetime of wondering why her husband took such pleasure in her pain. He gave me the proof our family needed to finally see past his charm. He gave me the moment when I stood in that ballroom, watching karma unfold in real time, and realized I wasn't his victim anymore. I was just his sister, and I finally taught him what that was supposed to mean. The cursor blinked at me from a blank document. 400 pages. 2 years of work. Gone. I clicked through every folder, every backup location on my laptop. Nothing. My manuscript, the one I was supposed to present to Hartwell Publishing in 6 hours, had vanished like it never existed. Looking for something. Dad stood in my doorway, coffee mug in hand, that smirk playing at his lips that meant he'd won something. My novel. Where is it? Of that. He sipped his coffee slowly, savoring the moment. I deleted it last night. Did you know you left your laptop open? Very careless. My chest tightened. You deleted my book. All 400 pages of that fantasy nonsense. Dragons and magic and whatever else you've been wasting your time on. That's 2 years of work. My voice cracked. I have a publisher meeting today. Had, Mom corrected, appearing beside him. Writers are just failed adults playing pretend. It's time you grew up, Naomi. Your sister sells makeup and makes real money, she continued. 60,000 last year. What did your little stories make? Nothing. Because I haven't published yet. This meeting was a waste of time. Dad set down his mug with finality. I saved you the embarrassment. Hartwell Publishing. They probably meet with hundreds of delusional writers. At least now you can focus on getting a real job. My sister Chloe chose that moment to swan in, designer purse swinging. Did you tell her about the opportunity at my company? We need someone to pack orders. Minimum wage, but it's honest work. I have a master's degree in creative writing, which cost us $40,000, Mom sniffed. For what? Said you could sit in your room making up stories like a child. I'm 28 years old. Living in our house, Dad pointed out. Because artists need time to create. He said it in a mocking voice, throwing my own words back at me. Well, time's up. Either get a real job or get out. I stared at them, my family, the The people who'd raised me on bedtime stories, who'd bought me my first notebook, who'd once upon a time encouraged my dreams. When had they become these people who saw my passion as a character flaw? The meeting is in 6 hours, I said quietly. This could change everything. Nothing's changing, Mom said firmly. You're going to call them, apologize for wasting their time, and then you're going to fill out applications. Close company is hiring. So is the grocery store. Even McDonald's would be better than this, pretending. They left me sitting there, staring at my empty screen. 2 years, 700 hours of writing, countless revisions, characters I'd lived with, breathed life into, loved like friends. Gone because my father decided I needed a reality check. They had no idea the book was already in print. But they were about to find out what happens when you try to delete a writer's dreams. See, what my parents didn't understand about modern publishing, what they'd never bothered to ask in their crusade to make me normal, was that traditional publishers don't meet with authors who only have digital manuscripts. They meet with authors who already have deals, who've already signed contracts, who've already gone through months of revisions with editors. My meeting today, it wasn't a pitch. It was a launch strategy session. For the book that was already printed, already shipped to warehouses, already listed on Amazon for pre-order. The book I'd sold 6 months ago for a 6-figure advance that I'd never told them about. I pulled out my phone and called my editor, Diane. Naomi, ready for this afternoon? Marketing is so excited, Toe. Small hiccup. My parents deleted my local copy of the manuscript. Silence, then laughter. They what? How very 1990s of them. Good thing we have it backed up in about 17 places, plus the 10,000 physical copies sitting in the warehouse. They don't know about the deal, or the advance, or any of it. Ah, her voice shifted, understanding. One of those families. Well, that explains why you use a P.O. box for correspondence. How do you want to play this? I thought about it. About years of when are you going to grow up? About watching them praise close every sale while dismissing my publications in literary magazines. About the contempt in their voices when they called me a failed adult. I'll be at the meeting, I said. But I might be looking for temporary housing afterward. Honey, with your advance, you can look for permanent housing. See you at 2. I hung up and opened my email. 17 messages from my agent, all various stages of excitement about the upcoming launch. Cover reveals from book bloggers who'd gotten advance copies, interview requests from podcasts, and one particular email that made me smile. Ms. Blake, we're pleased to confirm your book, The Last Dragon Keeper, will be featured in our staff picks display at all Barnes and Noble locations starting next Tuesday. I had 6 hours until the meeting, 6 hours to decide how to handle this. I could tell them now, watch their faces shift from smug satisfaction to shock, make them grovel, apologize, beg to be part of my success. Or, I put on my interview outfit, the one they'd mocked as playing dress-up when I'd worn it to author events. Packed a bag with essentials, printed out some documents I'd need. Then I went downstairs for breakfast like nothing had happened. There she is, Dad said cheerfully, ready to join the real world. Actually, yes, I poured coffee steady-handed. I've been thinking about what you said. Mom perked up. Oh, you're right, it's time to face reality. I'll go to that interview at Chloe's company. Interview? Chloe laughed. It's not an interview. You just show up and start packing boxes. Even better. When do I start? Are you serious? She looked suspicious. You're giving up the writing thing. Writers are just failed adults, right? And I'm tired of failing. The transformation was instant. Dad clapped me on the shoulder. Mom actually smiled. Chloe started babbling about employee discounts and how I could work my way up to cashier someday. This is wonderful, Mom gushed. I knew you'd see sense eventually. That publisher meeting was just a delusion. I know. I finished my coffee. I should go cancel it in person, though. Professional courtesy. Waste of gas. Dad grumbled. It's on the way to Chloe's store. I'll fill out the application after. They were too pleased with their victory to argue. I left with their blessing, Chloe's employee handbook, and a bag containing everything I couldn't replace. The meeting was in downtown Portland, in one of those gorgeous old buildings that screamed literary prestige. Hartwell Publishing occupied the top 3 floors. I'd been here before, for contract signing, for editing sessions, for the surreal moment when they'd handed me a check that could buy my freedom. Naomi, the receptionist, lit up. Love the outfit. Very authoress about town. Thanks, Claire. Is everyone here? Conference room B, they're setting up the display copies now. Display copies of my book, the one Dad thought he'd deleted. I walked into a room full of my book. Stacks of gorgeous hardcovers with the cover I dreamed about, a dragon curled around a crumbling tower, moon rising behind it, my name in bold letters across the bottom. Naomi Blake, not failed adult, not pretend writer, published author. There's our star. Diane rushed over, squeezing my hands. Ready to make you famous. The next 2 hours were a blur of marketing strategies, blog tour schedules, and discussions about the already in progress sequel. They showed me the early reviews, starred from Kirkus, glowing from Publishers Weekly. Pre-orders were exceeding expectations. Foreign rights were being negotiated. We're thinking a 30-city tour, the marketing director said. Starting with pals here in Portland, obviously, then Seattle, San Francisco, LA. That sounds perfect. I signed papers, posed with the book, discussed interview talking points. As the meeting wrapped, Diane pulled me aside. So, housing situation. I'll figure it out. I've got the advance money, just need to find. My sister's looking for a roommate. Nice apartment in the Pearl District. Writer friendly, she's a poet. Interested? Seriously. Honey, we take care of our authors, especially ones whose families try to sabotage them. Send her a text, mention my name. You could probably move in this week. I left the building with a box of my own books, keys to my future in my pocket, and a phone full of messages I hadn't checked. 15 missed calls from Chloe, 20 texts ranging from "where are you" to "mom's going psycho." I drove to Chloe's store and parked outside. Through the window, I could see her at the counter, phone pressed to her ear, gesticulating wildly. I grabbed one of my books and went in. Don't know where she is. She said she was coming here, but she spotted me. Oh my God, where have you been? You're 3 hours late. They gave the position to someone else. That's okay. I set the book on the counter. I had a meeting. You said you were canceling. Her eyes fell on the book, on the dragon, on my name. What is this? My novel. The one Dad deleted. Turns out publishers keep backups. She picked it up with shaking hands, flipped to the copyright page, the dedication, the author bio with my photo. This is real. As real as your makeup sales. More real, actually. This is my dream, printed and bound and about to be sold in every bookstore in America. But how? When? 6 months ago, when you were bragging about your year-end bonus, I was signing a 6-figure book deal. While Mom was calling me a failure, I was working with editors. While Dad was plotting to delete my future, it was already printed. Her face cycled through emotions. Shock, anger, something that might have been pride before settling on the family default, resentment. You lied to us. I protected myself from you. There's a difference. Mom and Dad are going to. What? Delete it again? It's a little late for that. I pulled out my phone, showed her the Barnes & Noble website. There it was. My book, available for pre-order. $26.99. Though you could probably get the family discount if you asked nicely. She was already texting furiously. I could imagine the family group chat exploding. The accusations, the demands for money, the sudden pivot from contempt to greed. My phone rang. Dad. I answered on speaker. Hi, Dad. You get to your sister's store right now. His voice was deadly quiet. We need to talk about this lying problem of yours. I'm actually at the store, Chloe's holding my book. Want to see? Book? He was trying to sound dismissive, but I heard the uncertainty. Your little story. My published novel. The one you deleted. The one that's already in stores. The one that paid me enough to move out, live comfortably, and never pack makeup boxes for minimum wage. Silence. That's impossible. Publishers don't. Publishers don't what? Don't publish fantasy. Don't pay advances. Don't work with failed adults who refuse to grow up. I smiled at Chloe, who was photographing every page like evidence. Turns out they do all of those things, especially when the writer is good. If this is some self-published vanity. Hartwell Publishing. One of the big 5. Check their website if you don't believe me. I'm featured on the homepage. More silence. I could picture him Googling frantically, face purpling as he found the proof. You've been lying to us for months. You deleted my life's work because you decided I was a failure. Who's the real villain here? We're your parents. We deserve. You deserve exactly what you gave me. Nothing. No support, no belief, no respect. So that's what you get. No advance money, no reflected glory, no bragging rights at church about your successful daughter. You can't. I can. I did. I am. I picked up my book, ran my thumb over my name. You thought you could delete my dreams, but they were already real. Already out there. Already bigger than your small minds could imagine. Get home. Now, we're going to discuss. I'm not coming home. Ever. I have an apartment in the Pearl District and a 30-city book tour starting next week. I have interviews lined up and a sequel to write. I have a life finally, one you can't delete. Naomi. I hung up. Chloe stared at me, still clutching my book. 60,000, she whispered. What? I made 60,000 last year selling makeup. You made? More. Significantly more. And that's just the advance. There's royalties, foreign rights, movie options. Movie? Netflix is interested. I shrugged like it was nothing, though inside I was screaming with joy. My agent's handling it. She looked down at the book again, then back at me. For a moment, I saw something crack in her facade. I used to write. In high school. Poetry. I remember. Mom said it was stupid, said I should focus on things that made money. Mom was wrong. Yeah, she traced the dragon on the cover. Can I buy this? Not the family discount, full price. You want to buy my book? I want to read my sister's book, the real one, not the deleted one. I smiled. Keep that one. I've got a whole box in my car. She hugged it to her chest. They're going to lose their minds. Probably. They'll try to take credit, say they pushed you to succeed. Let them try. I got 2 years of recordings of them calling me a failure. Hard to claim credit when there's evidence. You recorded them? Writers observe everything. We take notes. We remember. And sometimes, we write barely disguised versions of our families into our books as the villains. Her eyes widened. Did you? Chapter 12. The Dragon Keeper's family who try to sell her to the Dark Wizard because they think magic isn't real. Oh my God. They burn her spell books. Sound familiar? Dad's going to sue you. He's welcome to try. Parody is protected. Plus, he'd have to admit he's the neglectful father in the story. In court. On record. She laughed, actually laughed. That's kind of genius. Writers are just failed adults, right? We have nothing but time to plan our revenge. My phone buzzed. A text from the poet roommate. Diane says you need a place. Can you move in tomorrow? Rent's $900/month, utilities included. First chapter of your book made me cry. Good tears. Please say yes. I have to go, I told Chloe. I have an apartment to look at. Wait, she grabbed my arm. What do I tell them? The truth. Their failed daughter just became a published author. Their pretend writer just started a real career. Their disappointment just turned into someone they'll spend the rest of their lives claiming they always believed in. They'll rewrite history. Sega supported you all along. Good thing I'm the writer in the family. I know how to control the narrative. I left her there, holding my book like a shield against the storm that was coming. Drove to my new apartment with a car full of dreams they couldn't delete. Met my new roommate, a purple-haired poet who hugged me and said, anyone whose family tries to delete their art is welcome here. That night, in my new room with my box of books and my laptop full of backed-up dreams, I opened a fresh document, started typing. Chapter 1. The day after her father deleted her book, Lydia Blake became a bestseller. Sometimes the best revenge isn't anger or confrontation. Sometimes it's success they can't delete, dreams they can't steal, a future they can't control. My parents thought they deleted my novel. They'd only deleted my obligation to include them in my success. The book was already in print. Just like my new life. Just like my future. Delete that.
You owe us $500,000 for raising you, and we have every receipt to prove it. My mother thrust a leather-bound folder across the restaurant table. Her perfectly manicured nails tapping impatiently on the itemized bill. But why did my accountant's face go white when she saw the dates, and what secret about my childhood were my parents so desperate to hide? My name is Jessica Lynn, and I'm a 28-year-old financial analyst who thought she understood numbers until the day my parents presented me with a bill for my own existence. I should have known something was wrong when they insisted on meeting at La Bernardin, their favorite expensive restaurant where they believed public settings prevented unseemly emotional displays. "Every penny, Jessica," my father, Dr. William Lynn, said in his surgical precise voice. "From the hospital bills when you were born to your college tuition, it's all here. Itemized, categorized, adjusted for inflation." I stared at the bound document, its professional presentation suggesting they'd spent considerable time preparing this ambush. Inside, spreadsheets detailed everything from diaper costs in 1995 to my high school prom dress in 2012. "This is a joke, right?" I asked, though their stern faces suggested otherwise. "We invested in you," my mother Catherine said coolly. "Now that you're successful, it's only fair you repay that investment. Consider it a loan that's come due." I flipped through the pages, my disbelief growing with each line item. Birthday party, age 5, $847. Soccer camp, summer 2003, $1,200. Emotional labor for teenager phase, $50,000. Emotional labor? I sputtered. "Do you have any idea how difficult you were at 15? My mother sniffed. "I had to cancel 3 charity galas because of your moods." The total came to $497,832.41, rounded up to an even $500,000 for processing fees. "You have 30 days, my father said, sliding over another document. "We've consulted our lawyer. Since you're gainfully employed at Morrison and Associates, we expect you can arrange financing." I left that lunch in a daze, the folder weighing heavier than its physical mass. My parents had always been particular. Cold, perhaps, but I'd attributed that to their high-powered careers. Now they were literally billing me for being their daughter. That evening, I called my best friend, Aisha, who also happened to be a CPA. "They did WKHAT." She shrieked over the phone. "Jess, that's insane. Legally, parents can't sue children for raising costs. It's called parental duty of care. Can you look at it anyway?" I asked. "Maybe point out how ridiculous this is with actual accounting principles." "Send it over. I'll destroy their argument with GAAP standards alone." I scanned and sent the documents, then tried to focus on my actual job. But questions nagged at me. Why now? My parents weren't struggling financially. My father was chief of surgery at Presbyterian, and my mother ran a successful consulting firm. They lived in a $3 million brownstone and vacationed in the Maldives. 2 days later, Aisha called me, her voice strange. "Jess, can you come to my office? And bring any documents you have from your childhood. Birth certificate, medical records, anything." "Why? What's wrong?" "Just trust me, this is important." I gathered what documents I had. Surprisingly few, I realized, and met Aisha at her firm after hours. She had my parents' folder spread across her conference table, covered in sticky notes and red marks. "Okay, first things first," she began, pulling up a chair. "Your parents' math is wrong in several places. They've double charged for items, inflated costs, and included things that are legally gifts, not loans. So I don't owe them money." "You don't owe them anything, but Jess." She pulled out several pages, highlighting dates. "Look at these entries from 1997 to 1999. I scanned the items. Food and clothing, $800/month. Housing allocation, $1,200/month. Medical expenses, $400/month. Okay. Baby stuff is expensive. Jess, you were 2 to 4 years old. These aren't baby expenses. But here's the weird part. Look at May 1998 to October 1998. The entries shifted. Storage unit for belongings. $150/month. Preparation for return. $500/month. Legal consultations. $2,000. My blood ran cold. Aisha, what are you saying? She pulled out her laptop, fingers flying over the keyboard. I did some digging. Public records are amazing things. Jessica, were you adopted? No. I have photos of my mother pregnant, of them bringing me home from the hospital. Do you have your birth certificate? Not a copy they gave you, but one you got yourself from the county? I realized I didn't. Every official document I'd ever needed, my parents had provided. My passport application, college enrollment, even my employment paperwork. They'd always handled it, saying they had the originals in their safe. We need to check something, Aisha said grimly. The next day, I went to the Department of Health, requesting my birth certificate. The clerk typed in my information, frowned, typed again. I'm not finding anyone with that name and date of birth, she said. Are you sure about the spelling? Try variations, I said, my heart pounding. Nothing. According to New York State records, Jessica Lynn, daughter of William and Catherine Lynn, didn't exist. Could it be sealed? I asked desperately. Sealed records still show up in our system, just marked restricted. This is nothing. I left with hands shaking, calling Aisha immediately. We need a lawyer, she said, and a private investigator. Jess, I think your parents have been lying to you your entire life. I hired both that week, using my savings I'd earmarked for a house down payment. The PI, a former cop named Marcus Torres, took my case with particular interest. Missing childhood records, parents suddenly demanding repayment, no official birth documentation. I've seen this pattern before, he said, usually in illegal adoption cases. But they have photos. Photos can be staged, purchased, or manipulated. What we need is DNA evidence and document trails. While Marcus investigated, my lawyer, Sandra Kim, sent my parents a formal response to their demand, requesting documentation to support their claims. Their reaction was immediate and violent. How dare you bring lawyers into a family matter? My mother screamed over the phone. We gave you everything. Then you should have no problem providing documentation, I replied, my voice steadier than my hands. You ungrateful. The line went dead. They didn't contact me for a week. Then Marcus called with his first findings. Your parents' financial records show large payments to a family services consultant from 1995 to 1997. The company doesn't exist anymore, but I tracked down the owner. Dr. Monica Reeves. She lost her license in 2001. For what? Facilitating illegal adoptions. She would forge documents, create false birth certificates, and coach adoptive parents on creating believable backstories. The floor seemed to tilt. But the pregnancy photos. I found something else. Your mother was a patient at Reproductive Health Associates in 1994. They specialized in fertility treatments. She underwent multiple IVF cycles, all unsuccessful. The pieces clicked together with horrible clarity. The emotional distance. The itemized bill starting from birth, like a business transaction. The way they'd always called my successes return on investment. There's more, Marcus continued. Those charges from May to October 1998, foster care records show a Jessica Chen, age 3, was placed in emergency foster care during those exact months before being reunited with biological parents. Jessica Chen, not Lynn. The foster family's name was Bradley. They live in Connecticut now. They remember you, Jess. They said you were removed from your home for neglect, then suddenly returned to different parents who claimed there'd been a mix-up with names. I sank into my chair. My entire life, built on lies. Sandra called the next day. Your parents' lawyer sent over their supporting documentation. Jessica, half these receipts are fabricated. The hospital listed for your birth. It closed in 1993, 2 years before you were supposedly born there. What do I do? We confront them. With everything. The meeting was scheduled at Sandra's law office. My parents arrived in their power suits, their own lawyer in tow. They didn't know about Marcus's investigation yet. This is ridiculous, my father began. We're her parents. We have every right to request repayment for our investment. Actually, Sandra said calmly, let's discuss what rights you have. Mr. Torres? Marcus entered with a box of evidence. My parents' faces shifted from annoyance to alarm. Dr. and Mrs. Lin, he began, spreading documents across the table. Would you like to explain why Jessica's birth certificate is forged? Or why you are making payments to a woman convicted of illegal adoption fraud? Or perhaps why foster care records show a Jessica Chen being placed with you in 1998 after her biological parents lost custody? My mother's perfectly composed face cracked. You don't understand. Then explain it, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. Explain why you bought a child, forged her identity, and then tried to bill her for it. The silence stretched until my father broke. We couldn't have children. The IVF failed 9 times. 9 times, Jessica. Do you know what that does to a person? So you bought someone else's child? We saved you, my mother burst out. Your biological parents were drug addicts. You were 3, malnourished, barely speaking. We gave you everything. And kept a receipt for each item, I shot back. We thought if we accounted for everything, it would make it real. Make you really ours, my father admitted. The documentation was our way of proving we were good parents. Good parents don't demand repayment for raising their children. We were scared. My mother's composure finally shattered completely. You're successful now. What if you found out and left us? At least if you owed us money, you'd have to stay in contact. The twisted logic of it made my head spin. They'd been so terrified of losing me that they guaranteed it. Sandra leaned forward. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to drop this ridiculous lawsuit. You're going to provide Jessica with all documentation about her biological family and adoption, and you're going to pay for the therapy she'll need to process your lies. Or, their lawyer asked, or we report the forged documents to the FBI. Kidnapping, fraud, identity theft. Should I continue? My parents crumbled. Over the next hour, the truth emerged in pieces. They'd paid Dr. Reeves $50,000 to falsify an adoption. When I was removed from my biological parents for neglect and placed in foster care at age 3, they'd swooped in, claiming to be relatives. More money changed hands. Documents were forged. Jessica Chen became Jessica Lin, complete with a fabricated history. We gave you a good life, my mother whispered. Best schools, best opportunities. You gave me a lie, I replied. Every birthday, every celebration, every I love you, all of it built on deception. Marcus had one final revelation. Your biological parents, Jess, they're alive. They got clean, trying to find you. But the trail went cold at the foster system. My heart stopped. They looked for me. For years. They're in New Jersey now. They run a restaurant. They have 2 other daughters, your sisters. Sisters. The word felt foreign. As my parents, the people who raised me, sat in their expensive suits in that sterile law office, I made my decision. I want to meet them, my biological family. Jessica, please, William. I couldn't think of him as dad anymore. Pleaded. We're your parents. We raised you. Yes. And then you tried to charge me for it. Every scraped knee, every school lunch, every hug goodnight. All itemized on a spreadsheet. That's not love. That's a business transaction. I stood to leave, then turned back. You know what the ironic part is? If you just told me the truth, if you'd admitted you adopted me out of love and desperation instead of this, I would have understood. I would have been grateful. But you were so afraid of losing control that you lost me instead. I met my biological parents the following month. Linda and David Chen cried when they saw me, recognizing features they'd last seen in their toddler. They showed me photos of the daughter they'd lost, the years they'd spent in recovery hoping to find me again. "We know we failed you once," Linda said, clutching my hands. "But we never stopped loving you. Never stopped looking." My sisters, Amy and Grace, were curious but welcoming. They'd grown up knowing they had an older sister somewhere, their parents' lost daughter who they prayed for every night. It wasn't instant family. Too much time had passed for that. But it was honest, real, without receipts attached. The Lins tried to contact me several times. Emails about how much they'd invested in my success, how I owed them for the life I lived. I had Sandra send a final message. "Parents don't keep receipts. Love isn't a loan, and family isn't a business venture." I kept the itemized bill they'd given me. Sometimes I look at it, all those entries reducing my childhood to dollar signs. It reminds me that love isn't measured in money spent but in truth given. The Lins gave me everything money could buy but charged me for each penny. The Chens gave me away but never stopped bearing the cost in their hearts. I'm still Jessica Lin legally. Changing it would be too complicated now. But I'm learning what it means to be a Chen too. To be part of a family that doesn't keep receipts, that measures love in presence, not payments. The $500,000 bill. I had it framed. It hangs in my apartment as a reminder. Some debts can't be calculated, some investments can't be itemized, and real love never comes with a price tag. The Lins were right about one thing. They gave me everything. Everything except the one thing that actually mattered. The truth. That I had to buy for myself, and it was worth every penny. Emma starts private school Monday, my ex-husband's wife announced over the phone, her voice dripping with false sweetness as she delivered news that made my laptop screen blur before my eyes. We already enrolled her at Pemberton Academy. The paperwork's all done, tuition's paid, uniforms ordered. But I'd never signed a single form, never discussed changing my daughter's school, never even heard of Pemberton Academy until 10 seconds ago. So how exactly did they enroll my child without my consent? My name is Diana Torres, and I'm about to tell you how my ex-husband's trophy wife committed identity theft, forgery, and fraud in her bizarre attempt to steal my daughter, and how her own vanity brought her down. First, let me explain the custody situation. My ex-husband Richard and I divorced 4 years ago when Emma was 11. Standard split, joint legal custody, shared physical custody, alternating weeks. It worked fine until Richard married Brittany last year, a 28-year-old Instagram influencer who thought being a bonus mom meant redecorating Emma's room at their house in pink and gold despite Emma's explicit hatred of both colors. Emma and I had chosen Lincoln High School together. She'd shadowed for a day, loved the art program, made friends at orientation. She was excited as any 15-year-old gets about school. We'd registered in March, picked classes, even bought the spirit wear. Everything was set. Until this phone call on the last Friday of August. "I'm sorry, what?" I managed, gripping my coffee mug so hard my knuckles went white. "Pemberton Academy," Brittany repeated slowly, like I was dim. "It's very exclusive. Richard's connections got her in despite the late application. She'll get a much better education there." "Brittany, you can't just enroll my daughter in a different school without my permission. That's illegal." She laughed, actually laughed. "Oh, Diana, always so dramatic. We have joint custody, remember? Richard has just as much say in Emma's education as you do. Joint legal custody requires both parents' consent for major decisions. School changes are major decisions. I didn't consent to anything." "Well, the school has all the paperwork, so clearly you did. Maybe you forgot. I know you've been stressed with work." I hadn't been stressed until 30 seconds ago. Now I was approaching apoplectic. Put Richard on, I demanded. He's golfing. But don't worry. We'll handle getting Emma to school Monday. Our week starts Sunday anyway. Toodles. She hung up. Toodles. This woman had just informed me she'd enrolled my daughter in a different school and ended with Toodles. I immediately called Richard. Straight to voicemail. Then Emma, who was at her friend Sophia's house. Mom? What's wrong? She could hear the tension in my voice. Have you heard anything about Pemberton Academy? That snobby private school across town. No, why? Brittany says you're enrolled there. Starting Monday. Silence. Then, what? Mom? No. I want to go to Lincoln with my friends. We have art club planned, and Mr. Vasquez said I could take advanced studio, even though I'm only a sophomore and… Baby, breathe. You're going to Lincoln. I'm handling this. How can she just… She can't. And she didn't. Trust me. I hung up and immediately Googled Pemberton Academy. $30,000 a year. Uniforms required. Mandatory Latin. No visual arts program. They focused on classical education. Everything Emma would hate. I called the school. Pemberton Academy, this is Margaret. Yes, hello. This is Diana Torres. I'm calling to check on my daughter's enrollment. Emma Torres. One moment, yes, I have her here. Enrolled yesterday for sophomore year. Everything seems to be in order. My heart was pounding. I'd like to verify the enrollment forms. As her mother. Of course. We have all the signatures from Diana Torres. That's you, correct? Could you describe the person who came in yesterday? The woman claiming to be Diana Torres. Pause. I'm sorry. Because I'm Diana Torres, and I wasn't there yesterday. So I'm very curious who's been impersonating me. The silence stretched. Ma'am, I think you should speak with our headmaster. Can you hold? 20 minutes later, I was on the phone with Dr. James Whitfield, who was clearly trying to avoid a lawsuit. Mrs. Torres, there seems to be some confusion. We have enrollment documents signed by both parents. Dr. Whitfield, I'm going to be very clear. I never signed anything. I've never been to your school. Someone forged my signature and impersonated me. That's fraud. That's identity theft. And if my daughter shows up at your school Monday, that's kidnapping. That's a very serious accusation. Yes, it is. Now, I'm coming to your office in an hour with my identification, my custody agreement, and my lawyer. I suggest you have your security footage ready and whoever processed this fraudulent enrollment available to speak with us. I hung up and called my lawyer, Sarah Winters. She'd handled my divorce and was a pit bull in designer suits. They did dwoihat, she said after I explained. Oh, this is delicious. Brittany just handed us enough ammunition to revisit the entire custody arrangement. Identity theft? Forgery? Educational fraud? Richard's going to lose his mind when he realizes what his child bride just did. We met at Pemberton within the hour. Dr. Whitfield had clearly consulted with the school's legal team and was sweating through his bow tie. The admissions director, a nervous woman named Patricia, had pulled all the documentation. This is my signature, I said, pointing to the enrollment forms. Except I didn't sign it. Look. I signed my name on a blank paper. See the difference? Whoever forged this tried to copy from something, but the loops are wrong, the slant is off. Additionally, Sarah added, the witness signature here? That's supposed to be notarized. This notary seal is fake. The number doesn't match any registered notary in the state. Dr. Whitfield's face was approaching the color of his burgundy tie. We'll need to review our procedures. You'll need to do more than that, Sarah interrupted. You processed fraudulent documents. Failed to verify identity. Accepted a $30,000 tuition payment for a student enrolled under false pretenses. Who brought these forms? Patricia pulled up her computer records. A Mrs. Brittany Torres. She said she was Emma's mother. Brittany Prescott Torres is the stepmother, I clarified. She has no legal authority to make educational decisions for Emma. She had documentation, Patricia said weakly. Fraudulent documentation, Sarah corrected. I'll need copies of everything, including your security footage. The security footage was the nail in the coffin. There was Brittany, dressed in what I can only describe as wealthy mom cosplay. Designer pantsuit, oversized sunglasses indoors, carrying a $5,000 purse I'd seen her flaunt on Instagram. She was accompanied by a woman I didn't recognize. "Who's that with her?" I asked. Patricia squirmed. She introduced her as the family assistant. She had a folder with all the documentation. "Freeze that frame," Sarah commanded. "Zoom in on the folder." The assistant was holding a folder labeled Emma Torres, Educational Documents. Inside, visible at the edges, were what appeared to be photocopied signatures, probably from old-school permission slips. "That's conspiracy to commit fraud," Sarah said cheerfully. "This just got federal. Interstate commerce, wire fraud, the works. Diana, what would you like to do?" "First, cancel this enrollment immediately," I said. "Second, refund whatever payment was made. Third, provide me with all documentation and footage. Fourth, report this to the authorities as required by law." Dr. Whitfield nodded miserably. By the time we left, Emma's fraudulent enrollment was canceled. The police had been notified, and Pemberton Academy was reviewing all their admission procedures. But I wasn't done. I drove straight to Richard's house. His BMW was in the driveway. Apparently golf was over. I rang the doorbell with Sarah beside me. Richard answered, looking confused. "Diana? What are you doing here? It's not your week." "We need to talk about your wife's criminal activities," Sarah said briskly, pushing past him. Brittany was in the living room, scrolling through her phone. She looked up with fake surprise. "Diana, what brings you?" "Cut the crap," I interrupted. "I just came from Pemberton Academy, where you impersonated me, forged my signature, and fraudulently enrolled my daughter." Richard's head swiveled between us. "What?" "Brittany, you said Diana agreed." "I did no such thing," I snapped. "She lied to you, just like she lied to the school." Brittany stood, trying for indignant. "I was trying to help. Emma deserves better than some public school. Emma deserves to go to the school she chose," I shot back. "The one with the art program she loves. Not some stuffy prison you picked because it matches your Instagram aesthetic. How dare you?" "No, how dare you," I roared. "You committed identity theft. You forged legal documents. You conspired with someone to defraud a school. Those are felonies, Brittany. Felonies." Richard had gone pale. "Brittany, tell me you didn't." She turned to him, tears welling up on cue. "Baby, I was trying to give Emma the best. You said you wanted her to have opportunities. I wanted her to be happy." Richard exploded. "Not for you to commit crimes. Jesus Christ. Brittany, what were you thinking?" Sarah stepped forward. "Mr. Torres, given these circumstances, we'll be filing an emergency motion to revisit the custody arrangement. Criminal behavior by a household member is grounds for modification." "That's not fair," Brittany wailed. "I'm not a criminal. You committed fraud," Sarah said simply. "That makes you a criminal. The only question is whether Diana presses charges." All eyes turned to me. Brittany was crying. Whether real tears or Instagram tears, I couldn't tell. Richard looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. And somewhere across town, my daughter was probably stress-eating ice cream with her friend, worried about starting at a school she didn't choose. "Here's what's going to happen," I said slowly. "Emma goes to Lincoln High as planned. Brittany has no further input on any decisions regarding Emma's education, medical care, or welfare. All custody exchanges happen without Brittany present, and if I ever catch wind of you trying to interfere with my daughter's life again, I won't just press charges. I'll pursue them to the fullest extent of the law. Diana, Richard started. I'm not finished. You're going to explain to Emma why she can't trust her stepmother. You're going to pay for therapy to help her process this violation. And you're going to think long and hard about whether you want to stay married to someone who would commit fraud to control a child who isn't even hers. I turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Brittany, I'll be watching your Instagram. If you post one word about my daughter, one photo, one bonus mom reference, I'll have Sarah here file a restraining order so fast your follower count will spin. We left them in their perfect house with their perfect problems. The next few days were a whirlwind. The district attorney's office contacted me about pressing charges. Apparently, Pemberton had found 3 other suspicious enrollments they were now investigating. Brittany's assistant turned out to be her cousin, who sang like a canary when questioned, admitting Brittany had paid her $500 to pose as a family employee. Richard filed for divorce within a week. Turns out Brittany had been making other questionable decisions, credit cards in his name, attempts to add herself to his investment accounts, trying to legally adopt Emma without anyone's knowledge or consent. She played me, he told me during a custody exchange, looking exhausted. I thought she loved Emma. Turns out she loved the idea of being a mom influencer with a ready-made teenager to exploit. Emma started at Lincoln High as planned. She loves her art classes, made the volleyball team, and comes home covered in pain and happiness. The Brittany incident, as we now call it, is something we joke about in therapy. At least she thought I was worth 30 grand a year, Emma said during one session. That's like a compliment. A really twisted, illegal compliment. The therapist and I exchanged glances over her head, both thinking the same thing. Teenagers process trauma in the weirdest ways. Brittany avoided criminal charges by agreeing to a plea deal that included probation, restitution, and a permanent restraining order keeping her away from Emma. Her Instagram now focuses on healing from toxic relationships and finding herself after divorce. The irony would be delicious if it weren't so pathetic. Richard and I communicate better now than we did during our marriage. Nothing like your ex-wife saving you from federal fraud charges to improve a co-parenting relationship. He's dating an age-appropriate woman now, a fellow divorced parent who actually asks Emma's permission before suggesting activities. In Pemberton Academy, they implemented new verification procedures, including requiring all enrolling parents to appear in person with ID, custody documents, and a witness. They also sent me a fruit basket and a formal apology. I donated the fruit to Emma's art class and framed the apology. It hangs in my home office as a reminder that sometimes the best response to someone trying to steal your child is just to follow the paper trail they stupidly left behind. Last week, Emma brought home her first art project of the year, a mixed media piece about identity and family. In the corner, barely visible unless you knew to look, she'd incorporated a tiny cutout of Brittany's mugshot from the arrest record. Too much? She asked. Perfect, I told her. Art should tell the truth, even when it's messy. She grinned. Especially when it's messy. That's what Mr. Vasquez says makes it interesting. Mr. Vasquez at Lincoln High. The teacher she almost didn't get to study under because her stepmother thought forgery was a valid parenting technique. Sometimes I wonder if Brittany ever understood what she nearly stole, not just a school choice, but Emma's autonomy, her friendships, her artistic dreams. But then I remember people like Brittany don't think about consequences. They think about control, about image, about Instagram-worthy moments. Well, she got her moment. It just happened to include handcuffs instead of hearts. And Emma? She's thriving at the school she chose, living the life she wanted, creating art that tells her truth, including the truth about the stepmother who tried to forge a different future and failed spectacularly. Nurses aren't real medical professionals. We only want doctors and executives at Christmas dinner this year, my brother announced over speakerphone as I stood in the cardiac unit holding the heart of a 12-year-old boy in my hands during emergency surgery. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was literally saving a child's life while being told I wasn't professional enough to pass the mashed potatoes. The real question wasn't whether I'd show up anyway. It was whether they'd survive what happened when I did. The heart began beating again under my careful manipulation, and Dr. Patel nodded at me with relief as we continued the complex repair. "Beautiful work, Stanton. Don't know what we'd do without you." I couldn't respond verbally. My focus was absolute, my hands steady despite the fury building in my chest. My brother Marcus's voice continued through my AirPods, which I'd forgotten to disconnect when the emergency call came in. "Are you even listening, Maya?" he demanded. "This is important. The Caldwell family has an image to maintain now that I'm partner at the firm. We can't have you showing up in your scrubs talking about bedpans and blood. It's embarrassing." My surgical assistant, James, must have seen something in my eyes because he reached over and double-tapped my AirPod, ending the call. "You okay, Chief?" I refocused on the delicate sutures I was placing. "Fine. Let's close up. This kid's going to have a great Christmas." 2 hours later, after successfully completing one of the most complex pediatric cardiac surgeries of my career, I finally sat in my office and let Marcus's words sink in. Just a nurse. Embarrassing. Not a real medical professional. I looked at my wall of certifications and degrees. BSN from Johns Hopkins. MSN from Yale. PhD in nursing practice. Board certifications in critical care, cardiac surgery, and pediatrics. 20 years of experience. Chief Nursing Officer of St. Mary's Hospital, overseeing 3,000 nurses and managing a $200 million budget. Published researcher. Keynote speaker at international medical conferences. But to my family, I was just a nurse. My phone buzzed with texts from other family members. My sister Vanessa. "Don't take it personally, Maya. You know how Marcus is about appearances." My mother. "Maybe if you'd married Richard like we suggested, you'd be a doctor's wife instead of, well, you know." My father. "Your brother has a point. The Hendersons and the Wallaces will be there. All doctors and lawyers. We need to present properly." I screenshotted every message. Then I did something I'd never done before. I opened LinkedIn and changed my privacy settings to public. Let them Google me. Let them see what just a nurse really meant. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of surgeries, administrative meetings, and strategic planning. I didn't respond to any family messages, didn't argue or plead my case. Instead, I prepared for something better. On December 23rd, I received an emergency call. Major multi-vehicle accident on I-95. All hands needed. As Chief Nursing Officer, I didn't have to respond to emergency calls anymore, but this was going to be big, and my teams needed leadership. The emergency department was controlled chaos when I arrived. Victims streaming in, families crying, staff working with choreographed precision. I jumped into triage, assessing and directing, when I heard a familiar voice screaming, "I need a doctor, not a neurologist. Get me a real doctor." I turned to see my brother Marcus being wheeled in on a gurney, his designer suit torn and bloody, his left leg bent at an unnatural angle. Behind him, my father limped in with a gash on his forehead, and my mother clutched her arm against her chest. The family Christmas party. They'd been driving to the Hendersons' estate when the accident happened. I stepped back, letting my staff handle them initially. Professional distance, I told myself, though my hands itched to help despite everything. "Where's the doctor?" Marcus continued to shout. "I don't want some incompetent nurse touching me. I'll sue this entire hospital." Dr. Harrison, our head of emergency medicine, appeared at my shoulder. "Want me to handle your family, Chief?" "Follow protocol," I said evenly. "They're patients, nothing more." But then I saw her, my sister Vanessa's 8-year-old daughter, Lily, being carried in by a paramedic. Unconscious. Pale. Blood in her golden hair. Traumatic head injury. The paramedic called out. 8-year-old female. Unresponsive. possible internal bleeding. Everything else faded away. I moved without thinking, my hands already assessing before I'd even reached her. Get me a pediatric trauma kit. Set up or 3. Call surgery. Tell them we're coming up hot. Maya? Vanessa's voice cracked as she stumbled in behind her daughter. Maya, please. Save her. Please. I met her eyes briefly. I've got her. The best surgeon, Vanessa sobbed. Get the best surgeon. Money's no object. You're looking at her, James said as he appeared with the trauma kit. Your sister's the best we've got. I was already moving, calling out vitals and observations as we rushed toward the elevator. Behind me, I could hear Marcus's voice. Wait, what? Maya's not a surgeon. She's just a... The elevator doors closed on his words. Or 3 was ready when we arrived. My surgical team, the best in the state, moved like a well-oiled machine. Dr. Thompson, the neurosurgeon, scrubbed in beside me. What do you think, Chief? I studied the scans. Subdural hematoma with midline shift. We need to move fast. Your call, he said simply. Lead the way. For the next 3 hours, I fought for my niece's life. Every skill I'd learned, every technique I'd mastered, every instinct I'd honed over 2 decades came into play. When Dr. Thompson's hands started to shake during a particularly delicate moment, mine remained steady. When the anesthesiologist worried about her blood pressure dropping, I adjusted our approach without missing a beat. Brilliant, Dr. Thompson murmured as I navigated around a particularly dangerous bleeder. Absolutely brilliant. Finally, we were closing. Lily's vitals were stable. The pressure in her brain relieved. The bleeding stopped. She's going to make it, I said, my voice rough with exhaustion and relief. As we wheeled her to recovery, the waiting room came into view through the glass doors. My entire family was there. Marcus in a wheelchair with his leg in a cast. My parents bandaged but ambulatory, Vanessa pacing frantically. Dr. Harrison was with them, clearly trying to explain something, when the doors opened. As I was saying, we're incredibly fortunate that our chief was available. She's the best pediatric surgical nurse in the country. Lily couldn't have been in better hands. Surgical nurse? My mother's voice was sharp. I thought you said she was the surgeon. She is, Dr. Harrison said patiently. Chief Stanton is our lead surgical nurse for complex pediatric cases. She has surgical privileges that exceed most doctors. In fact, she trains our surgical residents. But she's not a doctor, Marcus insisted, his face pale with pain medication, but his snobbery intact. That's when Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the new head of cardiac surgery, walked past. She stopped dead when she saw me. Chief, what are you doing here on your night off? She turned to my family with a warm smile. Is this your family? You must be so proud. I've been trying to recruit her to Johns Hopkins for years. Best surgical nurse in the game. Hell, she's better than half the doctors I work with. Elena, I said quietly. My niece. Traumatic brain injury. Her face immediately shifted to professional concern. Who did the surgery? I did, with Thompson assisting. Thank God, she said fervently. No one I'd trust more. She looked at my family again. You know, your daughter literally wrote the book on pediatric cardiac surgical procedures. We use her techniques at Hopkins, at Harvard, internationally. Marcus's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Dr. Rodriguez wasn't done. Chief Stanton, I heard you saved the Watson boy last week. Beautiful work. This from Dr. Kim, our head of pediatrics. Chief, about next week's board meeting. Dr. Patterson, the hospital CEO, stopped beside us. Oh, family visiting? How lovely. You must be incredibly proud. Maya's revolutionized our surgical protocols. Mortality rates down 40% since she took over. One by one, they kept coming. Every doctor, every administrator, every department head who happened to pass by stopped to pay their respects, to ask my opinion, to defer to my judgment. Chief, when you have a moment. Chief, could you review this case? Chief, we need your input on. My father finally found his voice. I don't understand. Maya's a nurse. Just a nurse. Dr. Patterson raised an eyebrow. Just a nurse? Your daughter is the chief nursing officer. She oversees all nursing operations, has full surgical privileges, and sits on the board of directors. Half the doctors here learned their surgical techniques from her. The other half wish they had. But at Christmas, Marcus said only doctors and executives. My mother trailed off. I have an MBA from Wharton, I said quietly. Forgot to mention that. I'm an executive. Chief officer level. Same as any C-suite position in corporate. Actually, my budget's probably bigger than whatever Marcus manages as a junior partner. Vanessa burst into tears. I don't care what any of you are. Is Lily okay? That's all that matters. I softened, moving to embrace my sister. She's going to be fine. Full recovery expected. She'll be awake soon. You saved her. Vanessa sobbed into my shoulder. You saved my baby. Just doing my job, I said. You know, the job that's too embarrassing for Christmas dinner. The waiting room went silent. Finally, Marcus spoke, his voice small. Maya, Save it. I cut him off. I've spent years listening to you diminish what I do. Do you know why I became a nurse instead of a doctor? Because nurses save lives. We're the ones at the bedside for 12-hour shifts. We're the ones who catch the mistakes, who notice the subtle changes, who hold your hand when you're scared. And surgical nurses? We're the ones who make sure people like Lily come out of the OR alive. I didn't know, he said weakly. Because you never asked. You just assumed. Nurse equals less than. Well, let me explain something to all of you. This hospital runs because of nurses. Those doctors you're so impressed by, they'll tell you themselves. They're only as good as their nursing team. And I lead the best nursing team in the state. Maya, my father started. I'm not finished. You want to know what I did last week? I performed emergency cardiac surgery on a 12-year-old. Me. Not assisting, performing. Because I'm one of 6 nurses in the country certified to do so. The week before that, I presented at the International Medical Conference in Geneva. Next month, I'm testifying before Congress about healthcare reform. I looked at each of them in turn. But sure, I'm just a nurse. Too embarrassing for Christmas dinner. Not a real medical professional. We were wrong, my mother said quietly. We were so wrong. Yes, you were. A small voice from behind me said, Aunt Maya? I turned to see Lily being wheeled out, awake and alert despite the bandages. I moved to her side immediately, checking her pupils, her responses. Hey, sweetheart. How are you feeling? My head hurts, she said, then looked at her parents. Aunt Maya fixed me, right? The nurses said she's the best. Yeah, baby, Vanessa said through fresh tears. Aunt Maya's the best. Marcus cleared his throat. Maya, about Christmas. I have plans, I said simply. Every year, I volunteer at the children's ward Christmas party. We have kids who can't go home for the holidays. Kids like the one whose heart I held in my hands while you were uninviting me from dinner. That's where I'll be. Could we come? Vanessa asked hesitantly. To help. I studied my sister. She looked genuine, holding her daughter's hand with a new understanding of what really mattered. The kids would like that, I said finally. Bring presents, lots of them, and leave your judgment at home. Over the next few days, as my family members recovered, they got a first-hand look at what just a nurse really meant. They watched me manage crises, direct teams, make split-second decisions that saved lives. They saw doctors defer to my judgment, saw administrators seek my input, saw patients' families cry with relief when they learned I was on their case. On Christmas morning, they all showed up at the children's ward. Marcus on crutches, my parents moving carefully, Vanessa and Lily, who'd been discharged but insisted on coming, wearing matching Santa hats. "How can we help?" Marcus asked humbly. I handed him a stack of presents. Room 302 has a little boy who loves dinosaurs. Room 304, twin girls who are into princesses. Make sure every kid gets personal attention. As the day went on, I watched my family interact with the sick children, saw their eyes open to a world beyond corporate ladders and social status. Marcus spent an hour reading stories to a 5-year-old cancer patient. My mother helped feed babies in the NICU. My father played chess with a teenager waiting for a heart transplant. "Maya," Vanessa said during a quiet moment, "I need to apologize. Not just for this year, but for every time we made you feel less than. You're not just a nurse. You're a hero." "I'm not a hero," I corrected. "I'm a nursing professional. One of millions who do this work every day without recognition or respect. The only difference is, today you finally saw it." Dr. Rodriguez appeared in the doorway. "Chief, sorry to interrupt Christmas, but we've got a complex case coming in. 10-year-old, rare cardiac condition. I could use your expertise." I looked at my family. "Duty calls." "Go," Marcus said firmly. "Save a life. We'll keep the party going here." As I headed toward the OR, I heard him telling one of the children, "My sister? She's the best surgical nurse in the country. Want to know something cool? She's basically a superhero in scrubs." I smiled as I scrubbed in. It had taken a near tragedy. But my family finally understood. I wasn't just anything. I was a nurse. And that was everything. The 10-year-old surgery was successful. A Christmas miracle, the parents called it. But I knew better. It wasn't a miracle. It was skill, training, dedication, and the kind of expertise that comes from decades of being just a nurse. Later that evening, exhausted but satisfied, I found my family still in the children's ward, now joined by the Hendersons and Wallaces, the very families they'd been so eager to impress. "There she is," Dr. Wallace exclaimed. "Maya, I've been trying to recruit you for my practice for years. These must be your proud parents." As I watched my father beam and my mother gush about their daughter the chief, I felt a mix of vindication and sadness. It shouldn't have taken a crisis and public recognition for them to value what I did. But as Lily ran over to hug me, her bandaged head a reminder of how close we'd come to losing her, I decided to let the past go. They'd learned their lesson. "Best Christmas ever," Lily declared. "I got to see Aunt Maya save people." "Just doing my job," I said, ruffling her hair gently. "Yeah," Marcus said, meeting my eyes with newfound respect. "Just doing the most important job in the world." I looked around at the sick children laughing, my family finally understanding, and my colleagues, my brothers and sisters in scrubs, continuing their life-saving work even on Christmas. "Merry Christmas, everyone," I said. "Now, who wants to help me deliver the evening medications? Real medical professionals only." Marcus raised his hand first. "Can a humble lawyer help?" I smiled. "I suppose we can make an exception. Just this once." As we walked down the hall together, my brother on crutches trying to keep up, he said quietly, "Maya, next Christmas, dinner's at the hospital. The whole family. We'll cater it for your entire staff." "That's more like it," I said. "And Maya? I'm proud to be the brother of just a nurse." I stopped walking, surprised to feel tears in my eyes. "Thanks, Marcus. That means everything. Because in the end, that's all any of us want, not praise for being exceptional, but respect for being exactly who we are. And I was a nurse. Chief or not, surgical privileges or not, executive title or not, I was a nurse. And there was nothing just about it.